Sorry. Good morning. We can start the conference. We are going in live streaming, so we have to start in time. So please take a seat. So thank you very much. Si può partire, eh? Okay. So good morning, everyone. My name is Filippo Guarini. I'm the director of the Textile Museum. Welcome and good morning, everyone, and welcome in Prato, and thanks to all the partners, but also to designers, artisans, and artists that took part in the project and implemented the activities that we carried on within the project. Thank you very much also to the associated partners. Some of them are here in present, but some others are following the final conference through the live streaming. And of course, welcome also to the other people who is following this final event of the project through the streaming. So thank you again. So CreativeWear PLUS, it's a 12-month project that has been co-funded by the Interreg Med program. It has been a very short project, but I think also very fruitful and productive. More than half of the activities have been developed during the pandemic, and of course this situation affected a lot the implementation of the activities. Just to make an example, the project started 11 months ago, and we have been able to meet in person only once, and that time is today, okay, at the very end of the project. For a small institution like our foundation, it was a challenge to lead and coordinate a territorial cooperation project, so we are very proud to have done it, and we are also very proud to have contributed to the evolution of the CreativeWear model and to its diffusion in other areas of Europe by developing the initial project, which had been conceived and coordinated by the municipality of Prato by 2016 until 2019. Unfortunately, Mr. Gabriele Bosi, who is the Counselor for European Cooperation of the city of Prato, so the former lead partner of the initial project, the CreativeWear project, is not here, but he asked me to convey his greetings. And I think that also Mr. Mangani, the Counselor for Culture, he's going to join us very soon. So it's also a pleasure for me to introduce Mr. Francesco Marini, who is our president, to whom I give the floor for his welcome greetings, but I would like also to take the occasion of his presence because Francesco is also and mainly a textile entrepreneur, so he can give us his opinion about the current situation of the market of the textile production, of course in our area, but generally speaking in Europe. So thank you again, and please, Francesco. Thank you.
Good morning to everybody, and a warm welcome in Prato at Museo del Tessuto. It's a great pleasure for us to host this final meeting in our museum. Prato, you know, it's still the biggest cluster for textile in Europe, so we have an amazing identity in terms of knowledge of textile in the city. And maybe Museo del Tessuto is the most iconic place where we try to transfer and keep all this kind of knowledge along the new generation, and we work every day for that. I'm very excited to see a lot of people in presence because after the COVID it's not so common. So maybe we start again a new era for starting from now. So I want to thank all the partners of the project because it has been a long project since the beginning of the original CreativeWear, but this this kind of addition we made with the CreativePLUS means that we can extend all the knowledge, all the practice we had in the first project to other countries. So it's an amazing way to spread culture all over the Europe. So it's a very nice occasion to meet all together. And I try to answer to the question of Filippo asked me before, because you know, textile industry has been very tough during the 2020 because of the COVID. We have a great bounce from beginning of 2021, and we are in a very weird situation because we are talking about companies in the area that are full of orders, but they have great difficulties to produce because we are facing a lot of problems in terms of energy cost, increasing energy cost. We are talking about in some step of production approx 200% increasing, so it's amazing value. And we are facing also a different kind of problems like raw material scarcity. We are talking about also difficult transportation and cost of transportation. They are increasing 6-7 times. So we are studying to renew our company, to organize in a different business model, and this is an occasion also to learn something from different countries, and that's great also for that. But we think our company will be protagonist again in the next future. In Prato, we say that we do fabrics since 1,000 years ago. So we are thinking that then the next 1,000 years we still be here and will be protagonist also in the fashion industry again. But we have to rethink our company. We have to reduce maybe the things we are doing and to start to specialize a little bit in a specific product, try to coverage a little bit our needs in terms of our materials, and we have to add competence to our companies. That's a key point because market now is changing. Sustainability is the key point for everybody, for our customer, and we have to add competence, this kind of competence in our companies. That's very important because we have to be very transparent in our process. We need the traceability. That's another keywords for the next future, because we are talking about also the new strategy that textile that Europe start to apply from this year until 2026. And so in this strategy, everybody needs to work in that direction. Sustainability, digitalization, because we are talking about digital passport for product. So all our company has to be involved in this challenge, because we need to upscale our competence there. So it's a challenge, but we are proud that Prato will be protagonist again in this. So thank you for all the partners, thank you for all the people that are here, and with the web. So thank you for everything, and have a great time here in Museo del Tessuto. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francesco. So I think I invite Paolo, who is going to present the next session. And I take the occasion also to thank you for your assistance in managing the project. Okay, thank you. It's up to you.
Thank you, Filippo, for your trust in giving me also this beautiful project to coordinate with you, together with you. And it's really beautiful time today to see so many people live. So if we can launch the first presentation, thank you. So be assured it will be a very short presentation, because many more will come, so, and we want to enjoy them all, also with lively experiences from the stakeholders from the different territories of this project. So, first of all, I would like to say that this project is a kind of innovative project that doesn't rely that much on digital innovation, which is one kind of innovation. It's more innovation from the people. And as you will hear today, this is even more important, and it's much safer than what we usually mean when we say innovation, because there is no negative side when you innovate with the people, when you interact, when you bring up people that work and use their talents on the territory. And this project was just doing this, to bring up really gems that are there in the territory and that could be enhanced, valorized through the activities. We were doing this for 13 months, and unfortunately, we were doing this at a distance from each other. So it's a beautiful day because today we can touch each other, we can breathe close to each other, hopefully without any risk anymore. And finally, the three hubs, the three experience hubs in Palermo, in Prato, and in Athens can meet live the learning hubs that are in Alentejo, in Montelimar in Rhône-Alpes, and in Bayraj in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and really talk to each other after 13 months that we were already interacting a lot. So this project is actually valorizing and capitalizing a former project which was called CreativeWear. And in fact, this is the CreativeWear PLUS project, which means that it builds upon the results of the former project to share those lessons with the new hubs, with the three new hubs. The basic concept of the model is the creation of CreativeWear hubs. An hub is sometimes a physical space, but is much more a awareness space for the people to meet and exchange and interact, because it should be a place where the production, the SMEs of the textile and clothing sector can meet new energies, new impulses from the creative, artistic, and designing people. And this, as you can see, has been carried on through a lot of interactions across the regions, which has brought value not only to the learning hubs, but even to the giver hubs, like the more experienced ones in Prato, Athens, and Palermo. The hubs are delivering a lot of activities, have been delivering a lot of activities in the last 13 months until this is the last month of the project, but hopefully we look forward to new initiatives, new ways to support the results that we have achieved so far, like doing seminars, workshops, very top quality events that you can still trace through the videos and the recordings on the web. And I suggest that you really go there and listen to these beautiful live experiences of the working people in the sector. The new hubs started to learn from the experience hubs by using a canvas. A canvas looks very much like a business model conceptualization tool, which looks like that framework that you see at the center of this slide. And through that, they were able to pinpoint which way to go to innovate their local economy and textile and fashion sector along the directions of the CreativeWear model, which puts a lot of emphasis on networking, creating communities, creating possibilities for people that do not belong to the production to interact with those who are the so-called business people. The first main point is to cluster. Cluster, that means bringing together people, which was not very easy in the last 2 years, so, and even less in the last 12 months. So clustering and bringing together the people, as you see, is makes people joyful from the picture, because they really discover new things by interacting with the persons that are doing things with their hands, with their minds, with their hearts, and that can express this more fully through new projects. Also pairing. Pairing, that is matching someone who has gone through some projects and some initiatives and people who are working in the field but also need a new inspiration to do it even more forcefully, more with a greater impact, which was the experience that was at the end expressed by the partners of the project. And then in the end come out with thematic projects. These projects you can see around in the museum. These are manufacts, they are craftsmanships, and they are the result of the creativity of the people who have joined the inputs from the artists with their ability to create with their own hands through looms, by using looms, traditional ones, or even more advanced technologies, new products. And these products are these 3 projects that you will enjoy at the end of today's morning in the exhibition that is here in the museum. So these are just a few samples of the projects that have come up in the end, and they represent, let's say, highlight the outputs, the final outputs, tangible outputs of the project. Final reflections. I think the lessons of the project cannot be formalized too much, but as you can see from the thoughts, afterthoughts of one of our partners, there is a more awareness of the stakeholders that work together with us in the project to give new energy, new force to what they were already doing. And then there was a greater commitment of designers, artists, filmmakers, creatives to give new energy to the sector, to the people that work there, even creating new markets for the people who have been involved in the project. And the partner in the end was saying that there was a bigger understanding, deeper understanding, that to work focused, thanks to the project, in a very focused way for even a short period of time, but dedicated, brought out very important results for us all. So I will now greet you and let you to enjoy. Sorry, it's not enlightenment, not yet, but it's very close. You don't know. Maybe in the end we get old there. The end of the conference. Okay, enjoy the event and the exhibition. Thank you. I invite Jesse, who is the mastermind of the project, even the original thinker of all the stuff that we're talking about, to express his mind about the future and the follow-up and what comes next for us all. Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you. Thank you, Paolo. I just wrote the proposal, but anyway. So yes, the capitalization of the CreativeWear project capitalization is something you think about when the project's over, and you sort of, as Paolo said, what happens next, no? And so I'd like to take this opportunity to reflect a moment on what was our idea, our plan for capitalizing the project when it was over, what unexpected new kind of value maybe has been created and where that can actually take us. But first, a little bit of a side comment. Came to mind a brilliant presentation by a Milanese designer who was Japanese back in it may have actually been the 80s, but at my age, you get fuzzy about this thing. Zhao Zhou's name. And his original training was as an aircraft engineer. And he gave a talk, and this is 30 years ago, on the concept of turbulence. And he was exalting turbulence as the basis of his design. So explained a little bit about turbulence. Turbulent flow can happen on the top of an aircraft wing, and that's what the blue thing is there, which is supposed to give lift and keep you up in the air, right? But in certain circumstances, you get a turbulent flow, and that can cause the aircraft to stall, which is not a good thing. Now, don't get scared, because in the 1940s, some guy invented what are called vortex generators. And those are the little metal things that you see on the front edge of the wing, and maybe you've always wondered, what are they doing there? And what they do is they create turbulence. Everybody had been trying to redesign aircraft wings in order to get rid of the turbulence. But what this idea does is it creates controlled vortexes, microturbulence, you can see on the drawing to the upper right, that flow down the wing and manage to keep the lift of the aircraft. So on your way home, look out the window, and hopefully these little things will be there. And that's what keeps you up in the air. The point of this story is, and this I think frames our thinking about sustainability, we should not be afraid of turbulence. We should try and understand it, understand the way it works, be able to manage it, and build that into our thinking for the future. Okay, let's go back to where we started. As Paolo said, this is the timeline of the CreativeWear project. There was CreativeWear number 1 and then CreativeWear number 2 after an interval of a couple of years. And the original idea was linked to another project called TCBL, which was a Horizon research project. And it's very interesting the way CreativeWear Plus overlaps onto the timeline of TCBL. We wrote the proposal after about a year of the TCBL project, and we had this model of labs, a lab-based model to promote innovation. But we were missing a sort of territorial and creative dimension because TCBL was more a research project. So that's what CreativeWear was going to do, was to explore that dimension, which it did, and it developed the idea of the Creative Hub, which then became a part of the TCBL network at the end of the TCBL project and after the thing was done. And then, in order to carry forward the TCBL project, we formed CEDEX TCBL, and the big bosses of that are here in this room, which is the company that participates in European projects on behalf of the network created in TCBL. And we've just recently set up the TCBL Association, which will carry that back. Now, the projects that CEDEX TCBL got involved with set the theme for some of the thematic orientations of the work in CreativeWear Plus. We didn't want to just replicate CreativeWear. We thought, well, let's see what we can do using the same approach of aggregating artists in the industry to look at bio-based fibers, to look at upcycling, and to look at whatever the third thing is, but you know, heritage, the question of heritage. So and those are all linked to ongoing projects of the TCBL project. And then here we are with that question mark at the end. What is CreativeWear Plus going to give back to TCBL? So in CreativeWear, we did this model. You saw it. It was this canvas. The 5 partners of the CreativeWear project compiled this canvas, which is basically a descriptive framework. It helps understand within the different hubs what is the specificity of their context, the services, the partnership, and so on. And from that, we developed, this is really the model here, these triangles which sort of identify the types of services as concerns the three main target groups that the hub is trying to aggregate, and the impact path. This is the original model. And you see the services are support services mostly. The hub, the idea is to have equipment, space, organize events and prizes, give visibility to the work of the artists, provide business services to the companies, and constitute a hub for aggregating designers and creatives and that kind of stuff. And that was the good old days before things got complicated, right? You could do that kind of thing. And the impact would be to move towards a more sustainable business models and so on and so forth. And so the CreativeWear PLUS project thought, let's take this model and use it to transfer to 3 new hubs. And this pairing thing gave a particular dynamic to transferability. It was slightly different than what normally happens, and I think some very interesting dynamics came from this very tight collaboration in pairs with the thematic emphasis, which, as I said, came from the other projects that were ongoing. And that would all be very nice, except a little thing happened in the meantime. Exactly. Well, actually, CreativeWear PLUS started halfway through 2021, but the pandemic was going on. But when we were writing CreativeWear PLUS, we all sort of thought, well, it'll be over. And actually, when we were writing it, we thought it was going to be over. We'd go back to normal. And then it came back again. And now maybe it's coming back again. And now we have a war. Remember what I was saying about turbulence? I think the impression is that turbulence is here to stay. And we need to get out of the logic that we will ever return to normal. That there will always be turbulence. Because all of this, remember there was climate change? Turbulence is here to stay, and we need to try and enter into a logic where we are dealing with turbulence. So my question is, what has the CreativeWear PLUS project taught us about living with turbulence? I like these little shock things. Just to give some idea of some of the dynamics that apparently happened. These slides are based on a questionnaire to the stakeholders and to the hubs. What happened? Shock and suffering. I mean, it has been bad. People have been rethinking their priorities, quitting their jobs, moving to the countryside, going out of business, going back into business, starting up businesses. And people have, and there was something of this in Paolo's statements, become more aware of their responsibilities towards each other, and particularly in a business context. So artists and creatives within the hub developed some of those themes, developed some answers to those themes. What is the language of sustainability? What does sustainability look like when you see it? How do you wear sustainability? How can we reinterpret our values? And how can we make that visible? And how can we help people reorient their priorities? To what degree can the input of artists help us to rethink and to come out of a shock as in a new way? And look at some other effects. This total digitalization. I mean, for those of us who are used to having projects on Zoom, Zoom practically didn't even exist. It was GoToMeeting at the time. All of a sudden, the whole world was doing this, and the whole world was thrown with a digitalization that you couldn't ignore. And people even designing things, you couldn't sit down next to somebody to work out a design. Everybody had to begin to adopt digital tools and start remote working, which those of us in these European projects are used to it, but it's a different culture. It's a different way of collaborating. The idea of circular design throws totally new criteria. the creatives, the designers, were all of a sudden in a totally new situation, which they could feel more or less comfortable with, but this greatly affected their relationships to their clients, who are generally not used to this kind of thing. But through the hubs, again, going back to the role of the hubs, became places for reskilling, became places for learning about digital stuff, and not the way some, techno company tries to throw things at you and sell you God knows what, but people who really sort of are used to this stuff and know how to evaluate it, and also to the culture, the means of distance collaboration. And finally, let's look at the companies. Just to mention some other stuff, supply chains totally up in the air. All of that globalization that had been going on since the 80s is totally up in smoke. Staffing issues. People have COVID in China and also here. It became impossible to sort of, plan a factory day the way it was possible. Not to mention material and energy costs, which now are just going up through the roof. I mean, how companies survive, I don't really know right now, except something they're doing. But in what way has interacting with the CreativeWear hubs helped them to find the way out of this? I think people are discovering, I mean, before, natural materials and all of this kind of stuff, local sourcing seemed like a punishment. But people were discovering that you could actually find value in that. It could actually help you reinvent your company. That working with local value chains was not just a thing for some fuzzy kilometer zero. It actually is more reliable and can actually help you. And waste reduction is not just something that people tell you to do. It makes a big difference when the cost of things is double. But all of this requires a sort of a cultural shift. It makes people feel uneasy, understanding, how am I going to do this? And that's where the CreativeWear hubs and everything that was going on helped people. So let's call it regeneration. We're not looking at resilience is when a system receives a shock and goes back to its previous state. But in this world of turbulence, what we need to think about is how are we going to generate a new equilibrium? And so if we look at the services, the core services is resilience, helping us to understand and react to shocks. But let's look at the kind of services that it can give to the three main stakeholders. Artists and creatives maybe can get recognition, maybe can get fair engagement, maybe can get paid for the work they do. Maybe their role can be considered more than just decorative. Their role is essential if we want to survive turbulence. And let's look at the cultural and creative industries. What their essential role, in my opinion, is to help us critically evaluate the digital wave of innovation that's on us. Practically, there's nobody out there who you can really trust to say, do I really need this? Which is the best platform for this? It's the creative industry that has been doing this, and they know what works, what doesn't work, what costs too much, and what can work well, and can help you get online. They can help you begin to work with these things, and because it's not just a question of buying a tool and learning how to use it. It totally upends your working practice. And finally, the textile companies. It's all about rebuilding trust, because local value chains is not just a question of changing your address book or it's a question of working with people, communicating in a different way. It's different buying a textile from the guy next door or buying it from China. You go through a different procedure. Mentally, you go through a different procedure. And these are services that the CreativeWear hubs actually delivered or began to deliver, or realized that this kind of service can be delivered. And now if we look at the impact path, where could this take us? What kind of value could this have? Thinking more in terms of generation than regeneration. Here we're looking at developing something new, a new world. And the artists and creatives can help us see sustainability as a desirable thing, something that we actually want. It's not a punishment. It is what we really need. It's what we're looking for. And the cultural and the creatives can help us find a balance between the digital and the physical in this new world where we really don't know what's going to happen. And the textile companies can figure out how to configure, build, and work with local value chains. And that's going to be the big transformation, I think, in the textile industry and all of the industries worldwide. And people very much underestimate what that transformation is going to mean, because it implies all sorts of things that the CreativeWear Hub can help us to understand better. So, to synthesize, look at traditional thinking. By traditional, I mean 2 years ago. I don't mean the 1950s. And a regenerative model, okay? One where we can continuously generate new models in the face of turbulence. Maybe we should stop thinking about servicing and stop thinking about what services do I get and start thinking about community building, about this aggregation as the core service that a hub can give to its community, not as a Sunday afternoon thing, but as an industrial thing, as something that's serious and means work and means value. We should stop thinking about scaling. Scaling doesn't work. That's the big lesson of the end of globalization. We need to think about peer working, what you've experimented with this transfer model, where I think what you discovered is that the givers and the receivers are more or less, each has an equal amount of stuff to give reciprocally to the others and to learn from the others. And we should stop thinking about trying to be disruptive. I think people are tired of disruption. And I think disruption belongs to another era where somebody's trying to make money on the back of somebody else. And what we need to think about is transition, because we need to transition together. We need to transition as a community, because nobody can do it alone. There's no one app that's going to help the world transition. And as long as people think in terms of one app that's going to do it, they're on the wrong track. And that's a big lesson, I think, from this project. We should stop thinking about trying to solve problems, because as soon as you've solved a problem, you get a new one. What we need to learn is to ask the right questions. Can we figure out what are the right questions that will anticipate the problems we will have? And finally, and this goes back to our idea of the CreativeWear model, let's stop thinking about structures as fixed objects, and let's start thinking about turbulence. And how can we manage turbulence? And how can we use those little fins to make it move in a direction that allows us to continuously, dynamically reinvent, regenerate, and change the models that we are using for the moment. So now my little capitalization schema is complete. The TCBL network can get a lot of value from these lessons that the CreativeWear project can give it. And I can tell you that the TCBL network is going to take these lessons into the future, into the development of its network, and in the formulation of new projects where it's quite possible, if not probable, that some or all of you will be asked to be a part of. That is the website. Starting in July, you will be invited to join the association, because we're just setting up now the part which contains the network. The hubs are invited to join as labs. That'll cost you €25 a year. The businesses which are around you are invited to join. They will be funding most of the activities, so they will be asked to pay €250, 150 this year. 150 for startups, actually 50 this year. And the creatives will also have a role together with the citizens, the people in general who want to be part of and support this network. The network, the TCBL Association aims to be that, the community of community spaces, okay, from that logic. And this aligns us, perhaps more than you might think, with the current direction of European policy, which is going to influence very strongly the funding opportunities that we're going to be seeing in the coming years. The European Union has just issued, I think it was in March, a strategy for circular and sustainable textiles that is very strong and puts a very strong emphasis on the value of local value chains, on biomaterials, on natural materials, and all of on upcycling, circular economy, all of the things that you've been working with. So we are ready. We have the new ideas that you have developed over the last year, and somebody wants us to do it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jesse. That was awesome, really. So now we have the experiences of the partners. As you can see in the agenda, we will showcase all the 3 pairs of hubs, starting with Évora and Prato together. So, Fatima, look forward to your talk.
Okay, can we start showing the? Okay. Oh, thank you. So, thank you. So I'm just giving a very brief introduction of what have been done, and then I'll give the floor to Fatima, explaining us and showing us all the fantastic, we can say, activities that have been carried on within the project in Alentejo. So we started by our collaboration on transferring and receiving activities around October 21. So first of all, we set several bilateral meetings with Évora University and Passau Futuro in order to transfer them and to inform them about the CreativeWear project and the activities that have been developed within this previous project. So we had several online meetings in which we present, let's say, our mantra. That means that the heritage is a source of inspiration for can be an important source of inspiration for contemporary design and contemporary textile and apparel production. So we presented and we in depth the digitization activities of textile archives that have been carried on within the previous project, the cataloging software and database that had been set up. Then also we presented the activities that develop new creative interpretations of textures, patterns, and shapes. Of course, carried on in collaboration with local companies, around 10 local companies. And then the organization of creative residencies in which we connected artists, designers, and textile companies. Then, the most important, I think, one of the most important outputs of the project, that means the realization of prototypes and capsule collection inspired by the heritage and working in developing inspiration by physical archives and digitized archives, and the presentation and their presentation in international fairs such as Premiere Vision. Then we organized in November, so we took part to the TCBL days, in which a full day event was dedicated to the creative factor. So from one side we took part by showing our perspective in the connection of contemporary fashion and textile with tradition, innovation, sustainability, and then an afternoon session was completely dedicated to show and present the textile craft and heritage in Portugal with a very interesting event organized by Passao Futuro and the University of Évora. Then we organized a transnational workshop last May, an online workshop in which we presented some very important experiences based in Tuscany and in Alentejo, in which creativity, knowledge, and sustainable craft tradition are mixed and presented as interesting opportunities for the contemporary market. So I think it was a very interesting meeting as well. So then we organized a very interesting study visit in which the museum staff went to Portugal, to Alentejo, and visited some of the hubs in which all these activities has been, and the transferring activities has been developed. So please, Fatima, it's up to you.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to introduce the Alentejo Heritage Textiles Project. For this project, we researched and visited several of the traditional, well, the predominant traditional textile hubs in Alentejo. This is Portugal. Oh, can you see it? And the different points are the textile communities in Alentejo that we visited. This is Reguengos de Monsaraz, and these are the traditional patterns from there. This is Porto Alegre and the tapestries that they weave. This is Nisa, where they do multi-layered embroidered felt. And this is Ariolos, it's wool embroidered carpet. So we decided to focus on Mértola for the residency for 2022. This is Mértola. Mértola has a very long history of weaving. The patterns date back to the time when the Moors were actually there. And the process is 100% handmade, as you'll see. So we wanted to focus on Mértola because of this farm to textile, and also because when we first visited them, there were 2 weavers working, and now there's actually 4. So we saw that this was a very important community to work with, that the work that they were doing was extremely relevant to the conversation we're having as Jesse was speaking. The wool there is from the local company sheep, that are actually part of a repasteurization project, where because of the extreme temperatures now, there's actually desertification, and the sheep nourish the land, and also the wool can then be used to make textiles. So we documented the full process. The sheep are sheared, and then the wool is actually washed by hand in the rivers, which was really beautiful to see. Then it's dried on the plants, collected and dried in the sun, and then turned into yarn. So this is Donna Vitorina, who is the last hand spinner there. We're working on creating initiatives to bring in new younger generation to spin the wool. This is Elena, who is the master weaver in Mertola, who's also here with us. And this is Fatima. So the residencies were done with Elena and Fatima. So Machen in Mertola. Machen is a collective based in Berlin of makers, and it's all around the idea of the bed and sleeping. So we invited them to come to make a blanket with Fatima and Elena. This is Daniel and Kian. Daniel is actually one of the last 4 handmade mattress makers in Europe. He makes horsehair mattresses in Berlin. He's 4th generation from Switzerland. And Kian is an artist from Ireland, also living in Berlin. Can we play the video, please? I think the best way for you to experience this is through the film. So we worked with Julie Bernard to make films about both the residencies and also the wool process. Yeah, it's embedded. So the idea with the residencies is really to, while they're loading the video, is really to help bring the craft from Mertola and the weavings from Mertola into a new market. And then through bringing it into a new market, be able to pay them fairly and create a sustainable business or nourish a sustainable business so we can actually attract a younger generation to continue on with this know-how. It's very urgent to do this right now. So this residency was based on the traditional cobertor blankets. You see how this is 3 panels, and we turn it over here, and you see how this is what you wanted in the sack, but then it goes over. And they were inspired by the sacks that were traditionally used to carry grain. So the 6 different panels were the dimension of the sacks. So they came up with the idea, and then it was a conversation with Elena and Fatima.
Fátima Mestre. Tenho 68 anos, moro em Mertola há 30, nasci no Conselho, a 20 km daqui. Estou a trabalhar na oficina de selagem há 8 anos. Fiz uma formação com a minha colega Helena, que com duração de 4 meses. Após essa formação, fui escolhida para ficar a trabalhar, o que me deu muito prazer, e adoro o que faço.
Fatima is from Mertola. She's 61 years old. She learned with Elena in a training, and then she was selected from the weavers who were trained to stay at the cooperative and work there, and she loves what she does. So we thought it was important for people to see the full process and to actually, have joy in the process and celebrate the process, so that then we can bring value to the pieces and value to the work that the artisans do. And the time it takes. The looms are 300 to 350 years old. It's a 4-petal loom, as you can see. And the residency was really involved in the whole process.
Comme ça. Après, le doigt comme ça.
So these are the local wools. The warp is from wool from the north of Portugal, but the weft is all with the hand-spun local wool. And we had them really hands-on so that they could understand the process. This is the making of the bobbins.
Good. So, all right. Good. Yeah, variety.
Après.
Après, c'était
Celui-là.
celui-là. Et, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. We can even go like this.
Yeah.
Comme ça.
Comme ça.
And the black wool we got from dyeing the darkest brown with indigo. So we actually did that process as part of the residency.
É uma profissão muito bonita. Muito bonita. Adorei aquilo que faço. Me dá muito prazer fazer.
It gives her a lot of pleasure to do this work. She feels that it's a very beautiful profession.
I'm gonna do the last one.
Fazemos peças muito bonitas. Trabalhamos em lã, em linho, em algodão. Qualquer das peças eu adoro fazer.
She works with cotton, linen, and wool, and all the pieces that she makes, she really likes to do.
Gostaria que muitas pessoas aprendessem.
She likes sharing this knowledge with different people. And she's happy that this residency enabled that. And I was just at Extant, the textile fair in Spain, and there were master weavers from India, from Mexico, and they came and they were looking at this work and they were really amazed by the quality of it. And there were people who were hand spinners of silk and hand spinners of cotton, and so it was also really interesting to be able to connect, the weaving that's happening in a little village in Mertola with other villages around the world.
Diferentes daquilo que nós fazíamos e é com muito orgulho que as fazemos, muito prazer.
And here they were playing on the connection of the Muslim world to Mertola and kind of how the Bedouins do this transition between colors, which wasn't something that was done in Mertola. So we were working on that, and we actually had a code within each panel of the transition between the colors. And this is the finishing process. So the seams were really important, and the stitch. And this stitch was taken from a Bedouin weave, where it's actually it's about joining two panels together. And the other stitch that she's doing now is the traditional stitch that was used in the sacks, but you also see it in the pillows that the Bedouins had. So we were finding these connections across the Mediterranean through the process of the weaving and through the materials and the finishing techniques. And the loops they added, you'll see in the pieces downstairs, because they were at the corner of the sacks, so they thought it would be fun to have that, so it sort of adds a playfulness to the piece. And there's two pieces. One has a white stripe in the middle, one has the brown stripe in the middle. They're both downstairs, so you can see them. That's the weaving studio.
That's without me here.
So we took the piece to the design fair, Lisbon by Design, a few weeks ago actually. So we were showing the pieces in a very high design setting, which were very well received. And that's also part of the project, is kind of taking it out of just the artisan fairs and putting the pieces into situations where they can be appreciated and actually enter into the correct market. Yeah. Thank you. So there's more. There's more. That's all of us with Rosinda, who's the head of culture in Mertola, who's been extremely supportive of this project. So I wanted to mention her and thank her. Okay, so then we did another residency with Flores, and Flores is Valentina Pila and Emma Pucci. One is an anthropologist architect and the other is an architect, and they've opened a textile studio in Lisbon. So I had introduced them to Elena and Fatima at the very beginning because we did some consulting for them to link them with Portuguese artisans, and they had fallen in love with the piece and they had wanted to work with it. The technique hadn't been used in Mertola for over 35 years. It was never practiced in the cooperative. But they had a piece in the museum and they had some pieces in the archives, and so we invited, you'll see at the beginning of the film, we invited people from the community to bring blankets to look at so we could figure out how to do the technique again. Elena does this technique with linen, very small, for towels, for kitchen towels, but she hadn't done it at this scale and with wool. So, can we play? So we took advantage of this residency to be able to actually revive this technique and create a piece. They worked with the graphic designer Audrey Skyes to take elements from the traditional pieces and kind of decompose them and recompose them, and that's the traditional piece you saw when they entered.
Maria Helena Jesus Silva Rosa trabalha na tecelagem de Mertola.
Elena's the master weaver from Mertola. That's the